This week, we'll be going over Chapter 3 of the Harrower textbook, News Writing Basics. There is a lot to cover this week. We're going to start by learning the difference between facts and opinion, and why news writing relies on those facts rather than feelings. Then, we'll tell of the 5 W's that are in every story and introduce the inverted pyramid. Moving on, we'll talk about the basic news lead, show how to write leads that succeed, and provide some examples of those leads, and then talk about what comes next in the story. We're then going to talk about story structure, introduce the nut graph and its function in news writing, show how to organize stories in different ways, present story structures that differ from the inverted pyramid, suggest alternatives to long stories, introduce the kicker and how to end those stories, and then demonstrate the importance of rewriting and editing in news writing. To end our lecture on news writing basics, we'll present news writing style, especially Associated Press style, inform about the importance of deadlines, including a deadline checklist, and finish up by providing news writing tips, including a few rules of grammar and punctuation. You're going to learn a lot about journalism and mass media writing over the next several weeks. But the most important lesson can be summed up in these 8 words. You must try to be objective, truthful, fair. Good reporters respect the integrity of facts because facts tell the story. It's then up to the readers to draw their own conclusions. It's not the job of a journalist to tell writers what to think, only what to think about. Some people, even journalist Hunter S. Thompson, think it's impossible for journalists to truly be objective. Thompson said, with the possible exception of things like box scores, race results, and stock market tabulations, there's no such thing as objective journalism. The phrase itself is a pompous contradiction in terms. Now, maybe Hunter S. Thompson is right, and no journalist can ever truly be objective. But that's why there are 8 magic words and not 7. You must try to be objective, truthful, fair. Sometimes you don't want to be. Other times you just can't be. But as journalists, it is our solemn goal to be a watchdog for the people and try, as hard as we can, to present stories that are as objective, truthful, and fair as possible. So where do opinions belong in a newspaper? Most newspaper stories can be placed on a continuum. News stories should be as devoid of opinion as possible. Staunch Republicans should be able to write regularly about Democratic candidates, and vice versa, without the reader ever being able to tell what political party a journalist might privately support. Movie and other reviews are on the other side of the continuum, filled with the writer's opinion on the quality of the acting, storyline, and soundtrack. The best place for opinions is on the opinion page. As you can see from this example from the Technician Student newspaper at NC State, these 2 columns are filled with the writer's clearly labeled opinions. On a side note, you might notice the photo of former Stanford University swimmer Brock Turner, who in summer 2016 was sentenced to a 6-month jail sentence for sexually assaulting an unconscious woman. If you look a little closer, you'll notice the word rapist written across Turner's forehead. We'll learn more about this in a later chapter, but I'll take this opportunity now to mention when you can print in the newspaper that someone is a rapist, or a murderer, or an embezzler, or anything else nasty. You can do so only after the person has been convicted of the crime. Before then, no matter what you may feel or what evidence may be presented, the person has only been accused of or arrested for a crime. A judge or jury decides if a person is guilty, not a newspaper. Facts usually fall into one of 5 categories: who, what, when, where, and why. Let's go through the story here to see what information falls into what group. The first sentence, swimming was prohibited in Cooper Lake Monday after a dangerous amount of algae was found in the water last week. Swimming is prohibited. That's a what. What is what the news story is about. In Cooper Lake, this is your where, the location in which the story takes place. Monday, when the story happened. After a dangerous amount of algae was found, back to the what. In the water, that's where. Last week, when. The next paragraph starts, Polk County health officials. That's where and who. Next, they declared the lake off limits. Back to the what again. Because of blue-green algae blooms. Ingesting the water can make people ill and kill small pets. That's the why. The why is the impact statement. Now, I might not care about whether the lake is closed or when it happened, but I do care that it might make me or my pet ill if I were to come into contact with that lake water. The first W that we'll take a closer look at is the who. Readers love stories that focus on people. It's the who that keeps it real. The story isn't happening to some nameless, faceless person, but to Amy, to Ahmed, or to Andy, to someone in your community. Who is involved? Next, who is affected? Who is going to benefit? And one of the journalist's favorite questions, who is getting screwed? All of these questions tie back to the impact of the story, one of the things that makes it newsworthy. And if the who is a famous person, then you have the prominence factor as well. Thinking back to our story from the last slide, what if Cooper Lake was scheduled to host a huge windsurfing competition in the next week? A great who angle would be to speak with the organizer of the competition, or someone scheduled to compete, about how the closure is directly impacting them. The next W is the what. The what is what gives the story its substance. Now, stories can get dry and dull pretty quickly if they focus too much on the what, which is why they work great when paired with the who. Think about if the story spent 5 paragraphs talking about blue-green algae, its history, scientific properties, common causes, and cleanup procedures. A news story isn't a scientific paper or a business report. It needs to balance what with who the what is happening to. When is our third W. We already talked about how one of the basic values of newsworthiness is immediacy. Timeliness is essential to every story. Readers want to know when events happened or will happen, and how long they lasted or are expected to last. What if the reporter had not submitted the lake story until a week after it had reopened? It wouldn't be very timely, and the story would probably be cut by the editor. Or what if the lake story hadn't mentioned how long the lake was expected to be closed? Even if officials don't know, the story should say that. Where is W number 4. Proximity is a news value. The closer the event, the more relevant it is to readers. If Cooper Lake was 200 miles from us, we wouldn't care whether it was closed to windsurfers or sailboarders. Now, many stories often require supplements to help explain the where. These can include maps, diagrams, or photos. If only a section of Cooper Lake was closed, a map showing the access points would be beneficial to our readers. The story could also provide information on other area lakes readers could visit instead. The why is our 5th W. Finding explanations as to why something happened can be difficult, but that's what makes the news meaningful. What if the reason the blue-green algae was blooming was because a factory was dumping something toxic into the lake? and it would cost taxpayers $1 million to clean up the algae. Now that's your story. Now, I know I said there were 5 W's, but there's also how. How stories often require detailed explanation. They're sometimes omitted to save space. If the lake did need to be cleaned, specific cleaning procedures aren't necessarily something your readers need to know about. But readers do love a good how-to story. From how to decorate your home for Valentine's Day to how to keep your outdoor plants blooming during the summer heat. A tool used by journalists to help them write news stories is called the inverted pyramid. Said to have developed during the Civil War, when correspondents needed to send their copy back to editors via unreliable telegraphs, the inverted pyramid summarizes the most important facts at the story's start. That way, if not all of the reporter's telegraphs made it back to the editor, the story could still be run. The first layer of the pyramid is the lead, which summarizes the story's most important facts, a combination of at least a few of the who, what, when, where, and why elements. The second layer adds supporting information and key quotes. Layer 3 adds even more details, additional facts, and quotes. Then more details, and so on. It kind of looks like an upside-down pyramid, which is where it gets its name. The inverted pyramid is a good format for a typical news story. It's a summarize first, explain later type of format. The story tries to resolve everything in the beginning of the story. Now, the inverted pyramid is also handy in that it allows editors to easily trim stories if you need to cut 4 paragraphs from a story so it will fit in the newspaper. An editor doesn't need to reread the entire story to find the least important details. They are always at the bottom. Now, the inverted pyramid can work well for stories like the one on page 40 of your textbook. The first version of the story lists the facts in chronological order rather than in order of importance. The most important element to that story is that the man is now escaped from police custody, not how the ordeal started. While the inverted pyramid works well for that story, it doesn't for everything else. The inverted pyramid can also get repetitive, and it doesn't always organize the story material logically.